Have you ever woken up, looked at the morning light hitting the wall, and felt a profound sense of dread, not because of what you have to do, but simply because you have to exist through another day? It is a heavy, quiet weight. It's not the kind of tired that a good night's sleep can fix. You could sleep for 12 hours, drink all the coffee in the world, and still feel an ache deep in your bones. This is the baseline of emotional burnout. It is the moment your mind and heart simply pull the emergency brake because they cannot carry one more ounce of pressure. You aren't lazy and you aren't failing. You are just completely, utterly empty. When you reach this point, the fatigue becomes invisible to everyone else, but it is the biggest thing in the room to you. On the outside, you look exactly the same. You walk down the street, you attend meetings, you sit across from people at dinner, and you play your part. But inside, you are watching your life happen through a thick sheet of glass. Everything feels incredibly far away. You hear people talking, you see the world moving around you, but you can't quite touch it. You are trapped inside an exhausted mind, trying to remember what it used to feel like to have a spark, to feel excitement, or to just feel light. It is a deeply lonely place to be, because you can't point to a physical wound to explain why you are hurting. If you broke an arm, people would rush to help you carry things. But when your spirit is bruised, you are expected to keep carrying the exact same load without dropping a single piece. You start to doubt yourself. You think, why is this so hard for me? Why can't I just shake this off? You remember a version of yourself that used to handle all of this with ease. And the loss of that version hurts more than the exhaustion itself. You feel like a ghost inhabiting your own life, moving through the motions of a story you no longer have the strength to write. Think about how much effort it takes just to get out of bed when every muscle feels like it is made of lead. You stare at the ceiling, counting down the minutes, trying to gather enough internal momentum just to put your feet on the floor. The simple act of choosing an outfit feels like a massive, high-stakes decision that you don't have the bandwidth to make. You look at a stack of mail on the counter, or a pair of shoes left in the hallway, and instead of just moving them, you feel a wave of despair, because even that tiny, physical movement feels like asking you to lift a boulder. This invisible fatigue strips away your ability to feel present. You are constantly anticipating the next thing that will demand something from you, which means you can never actually rest in the current moment. Your mind is always on high alert, guarding the tiny, microscopic crumb of energy you have left. When someone speaks to you, it takes an extra second or two for their words to process, because your brain is running so incredibly slow. You smile, you nod, and you say the right things, but internally, you are just praying for the conversation to end so you can step back into the quiet safety of your own silence. It is an exhaustion that seeps into your emotional life, turning everything gray. The things that used to bring you absolute joy, a favorite song, a conversation with a close friend, the view from your window, Now just feel neutral. You don't have the energy to feel happy, and you don't even have the energy to feel truly sad. You are just numb. You are suspended in a state of survival, where your only goal for the day is to make it back to your bed without breaking down in front of someone. Please understand that this current state of emptiness is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of your history. It is the receipt for every single time you chose to be strong when you actually needed to break. It is the physical consequence of holding everything together for everyone else while your own foundation was quietly crumbling underneath you. You have carried too much for too long, and your system has finally said no more. This deep, heavy fatigue is not your enemy. It is your body's desperate, loving attempt to protect you from burning away completely. It is forcing you to stop because you refused to stop on your own. We live in a world that praises the grind, a world that tells us to keep pushing even when our engines are sputtering. So, we try. We force ourselves to keep up with the daily routines. We try to engage in conversations. We try to care about the projects we used to love. And we try to maintain a brave face for the people around us. But it feels like trying to drive a car across the country with a completely empty power tank. Every tiny demand, a text message that needs a reply, a decision about what to make for dinner, a broken shoelace, feels like an absolute mountain. When you are running on fumes, even the smallest breeze can feel like a hurricane. We buy into this dangerous lie that if we just push a little harder, if we just find a little more willpower, we can somehow get through to the other side of our exhaustion. We tell ourselves, if I can just make it to the weekend, or if I can just finish this one project, then I will allow myself to rest. But the weekend comes and goes. The project ends, and the rest never feels like enough, because the debt we owe to our bodies is far too large. You cannot pay off months of emotional bankruptcy with a few hours of sitting on the couch. Yet, we keep demanding more from ourselves, treating our hearts and minds like machines that just need a bit more grease to keep running. The reality of running on fumes is that you are constantly living on borrowed time and borrowed energy. Every single thing you force yourself to do takes a piece of your core stability. You start to notice that your patience is completely gone. A tiny inconvenience, like dropping a pen on the floor or missing a green light, sends a jolt of intense frustration or deep sadness through your entire body. You aren't reacting to the pen or the traffic light. You are reacting to the absolute lack of space inside you. There is no buffer left. There is no cushion to absorb the ordinary bumps of life. You are walking around completely raw, with your nerves exposed to the world. Think about the sheer panic that sets in when someone asks you for a favor, even someone you love dearly. A friend asks if you can look over a document, or a family member asks if you can drop by to help them move a piece of furniture. In the past, you would have said yes without a second thought. But now, the request feels like a threat. Your heart rate quickens, your chest tightens, and you feel a wave of resentment building up inside you. Then, almost immediately, the guilt follows. You think, what is wrong with me? Why am I being so selfish? You blame your character when you should be looking at your capacity. You simply do not have the fuel to give away. And your system is trying to protect the tiny drop you have left. Living this way means you are always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You become hyper-vigilant, constantly scanning your environment for the next demand that might break you completely. You avoid making plans because the thought of having to be present and engaging in 3 days feels like an impossible commitment. You find yourself retreating into corners, looking for any moment where you don't have to perform, don't have to speak, and don't have to be anyone's anchor. You are surviving on the absolute bare minimum, doing just enough to keep the plates spinning while you quietly pray that no one notices how violently your hands are shaking. The myth tells us that running on fumes is a sign of strength, a badge of honor that proves how dedicated, resilient, and reliable we are. But there is nothing heroic about slowly erasing yourself for the sake of appearances. When you run on fumes, you aren't actually living. You are just delaying an inevitable collapse. You are burning the very fabric of who you are to keep a fire going that was never meant to sustain you alone. You look at others who seem to be managing their lives perfectly, and you feel a profound sense of isolation, wondering how everyone else received the manual for survival while you were left out in the cold. We have to stop honoring the exhaustion. We have to stop believing that our value is tied to how much suffering we can endure before we finally drop. Pushing through the pain doesn't make you stronger. It just leaves you more disconnected from the person you actually are. When you are down to that final drop of fuel, the most courageous thing you can do is not to press down harder on the gas pedal, but to finally pull over to the side of the road. It means accepting that the fumes have run out, the tank is empty, and no amount of wishing or forcing is going to make the engine turn over until you stop and refill it from the very bottom. Usually, when we feel stressed, we have a toolkit. Maybe you take a long walk through the neighborhood, listen to a favorite album, or sit quietly with a notebook to sketch out your thoughts. But when emotional burnout takes over, those tools seem to lose their magic. You go for the walk, but your legs feel like lead, and your mind is completely blank. You put on the music, but it just sounds like noise. It is incredibly frustrating and frightening when the things that used to bring you back to life suddenly offer no comfort at all. It leaves you feeling stranded in your own life. This is the point where a strange kind of panic starts to settle in. In the past, whenever life got heavy, you knew exactly how to find your way back to yourself. You had your rituals. Maybe it was sitting in a quiet corner with a warm cup of tea, watching the rain outside, or taking a long drive down a familiar road just to let your mind wander. Those moments used to feel like a deep breath after being underwater. But now, you go through the exact same motions. You sit in the exact same chair. You play the exact same song. And nothing happens. The tea gets cold. The road feels long and exhausting. And the silence just feels heavy. You are doing everything right, but the relief refuses to come. It feels like showing up to a house you've lived in for years, putting your key into the front door, and realizing the lock has been changed. You are locked out of your own peace. When your go-to coping mechanisms stop working, you begin to wonder if you are permanently broken. You think, if the things that always saved me before can't save me now, then what will? This realization brings a deep sense of grief. You aren't just tired. You are mourning the loss of your comfort zones. You feel completely exposed, standing in the middle of your exhaustion without any shelter to hide under. Think about the frustration of trying to force yourself to feel better. You pick up a book that used to inspire you, and you read the same paragraph 5 times because the words just bounce off your brain. You try to create something, to express what is happening inside you, but your creativity feels like a dried-up well. Even reaching out to a favorite person, someone whose voice usually acts as an anchor for your soul, feels like too much work. You dread the thought of them asking how you are, because explaining this level of emptiness requires energy you simply do not possess. So, you isolate yourself further, watching your world shrink smaller and smaller. This breakdown of your usual tools happens because emotional burnout operates on a completely different level than everyday stress. Stress is about having too much on your plate. Burnout is about having too little of yourself left. Your old tools were designed to help you manage the external pressure, to help you blow off steam so you could return to the race. But when you are completely burned out, there is no race left to run. Your system has changed the rules of survival. It doesn't want you to cope better with a frantic life. It wants you to stop living a frantic life altogether. The tools stop working because your body is actively rejecting the old way of doing things. It is incredibly difficult to sit in that empty space without trying to fix it. We are so conditioned to be proactive, to find solutions, and to heal ourselves on a timeline. When the old remedies fail, our immediate instinct is to look for new, harder ways to force a breakthrough. We buy new journals, we research new routines, or we try to push through the numbness by sheer force of will. But you cannot force a weary heart to open up before it is ready. Every time you try to use a tool to fix your exhaustion, you are treating your tiredness as an enemy that needs to be defeated, rather than a wounded part of yourself that needs to be held. When the things that used to work stop working, it is actually a painful invitation to find a deeper level of honesty with yourself. It means the surface-level comforts are no longer enough to sustain the depth of what you are carrying. It is a sign that you have outgrown your old survival strategies. Sitting in the quiet frustration of this moment is terrifying, but it is also where the true shift begins. You have to learn how to exist without a quick fix. You have to learn how to just sit with the emptiness without trying to decorate it or escape it. And trust that this stillness is exactly what your soul is begging for. It takes an immense amount of energy to pretend that you are okay. We spend so much time masking our exhaustion because we don't want to disappoint anyone or admit that we can't handle it all. But true healing cannot begin until we stop fighting the reality of our exhaustion. There is a profound turning point when you finally drop your shoulders, sigh deeply, and whisper to yourself, "I have nothing left to give right now." Admitting your emptiness isn't a defeat. It is the first honest step toward recovery. It is acknowledging the truth of where you are. We are terrified of what will happen if we let the mask slip. We think that if we admit how truly depleted we are, our entire world will come crashing down around us. We worry that the people who depend on us will see us as weak, or that the life we have worked so hard to build will somehow fall apart if we stop holding up the pillars for just a moment. So, we keep performing. We put on the smile, we answer the calls, and we tell everyone, "I'm just a little tired," when the truth is that we are drowning. We become actors in our own lives, terrifyingly disconnected from the pain pulsing right beneath the surface. But pretending to be strong when you are broken is the most exhausting thing a human being can do. It is a double weight. You are carrying the heavy reality of your burnout, and you are carrying the heavy armor required to hide it. Eventually, the armor becomes too heavy to lift. The courage to admit you are empty doesn't look like a grand, heroic gesture. It looks like a quiet breakdown on the floor when no one is watching. It looks like staring at your reflection and finally stopping the inner narrative that tells you to just suck it up and keep going. Think about the sheer relief that comes when you stop fighting the tide. When you are swimming against a powerful current, trying with all your might to reach a shore that keeps getting further away, the moment you decide to stop kicking isn't an act of giving up. It is an act of survival. You let the water hold you. Admitting your emptiness is exactly like that. It is looking at the people in your life, or even just looking at yourself in the mirror, and saying, "I am completely out of resources. I cannot fix this today. I cannot help you today, and I cannot be the person you need me to be right now." It is incredibly painful to say those words, because our identity is often so tied to being the stable one, the provider, the healer, or the achiever. When you admit you are empty, you have to face the fear of letting people down. You have to sit with the uncomfortable truth that you are human, bound by real physical and emotional limits. But there is a beautiful, raw honesty in that vulnerability. The moment you stop pretending, you create a space for real truth to exist in your life. You stop living a lie, and you allow your tired body and your weary mind to finally catch up with each other. This admission is the exact place where your healing actually begins. You cannot fill a cup that you are pretending is already full. By continually telling yourself and the world that you are doing fine, you block the very comfort and rest that you desperately need. When you finally own your emptiness, You give your nervous system permission to drop its guard. The constant tension in your jaw, the tight knot in your stomach, the frantic scanning of your mind, it all begins to soften. Not because the problems have magically vanished, but because you have stopped fighting the reality of your own exhaustion. It takes a profound amount of bravery to look at a demanding world and say, "No, I have nothing left." It is an act of radical self-preservation. It is a declaration that your well-being matters just as much as the things you produce or the roles you fulfill for others. When you find the words to confess your depletion, you are no longer abandoning yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. You are finally taking your own side. You are standing up for the tired, wounded parts of your soul and saying, "I see how much you are hurting, and I am finally going to let you rest." The legendary psychologist Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." We often try to bypass the painful parts of our lives, hoping to jump straight back to productivity and happiness. But Jung's words remind us that this heavy, painful low point actually holds a specific kind of wisdom. The pain of burnout is a message. It is your system shouting that the way you have been living is no longer sustainable. It is an invitation to stop looking outward for answers and to finally turn your attention inward, even if what you find there is just a quiet, tired space. When we find ourselves trapped at the very bottom of our emotional reserves, our immediate reaction is to see this low point as a valley of failure. We look at our lack of energy, our numbness, and our despair as proof that something has gone terribly wrong with who we are. But if we listen to the perspective that Jung offered, we can begin to see this dark, quiet space differently. This low point is not a prison. It is a crossroads. It is the place where the old version of you, the version that ran until it broke, the version that gave until there was nothing left, finally reaches its absolute limit. The pain you are experiencing is the cracking open of that old outer shell. It is incredibly frightening to sit in the darkness of a low point when you are used to walking in the light of clarity and action. You feel lost, as if the compass you use to navigate your life has completely shattered. But Jung believed that it is precisely when we are lost, when the conscious mind can no longer find a way forward, that the deeper parts of our nature take over to protect us. This complete collapse of your energy is actually a forced pause initiated by your own psyche. It is an internal intervention. Your system has recognized that if you kept going on the path you were on, you would lose yourself entirely. The low point is a sanctuary disguised as a storm. Think about how much of your life has been spent looking outward, worrying about expectations, measuring your worth by your achievements, and keeping up appearances for the world around you. When you are forced into this quiet, heavy space of burnout, all of those external distractions are stripped away because you simply don't have the strength to look at them anymore. You are forced to look at yourself. You are forced to sit with the parts of your life that you have neglected, your boundaries, your deep exhaustion, and your unspoken hurts. This transition from the external world to the internal world is painful, but it is the only way we ever truly grow. Jung also famously noted, "What you resist persists." When we fight against our low points, when we try to force cheerfulness or rush our recovery, we only prolong our suffering. We waste the tiny amount of energy we have left trying to pretend we are somewhere we are not. The wisdom of the low point requires absolute surrender to the reality of the present moment. It asks you to stop trying to climb out of the valley before you have even understood why you were brought here. It asks you to have the courage to say, "I am in the dark right now. And instead of fighting the darkness, I am going to sit down and let it teach me." This low point holds a profound truth about your resilience. It shows you that even when everything else has been stripped away, your productivity, your roles, your outward strength, you are still here. The core of who you are is still intact, quietly waiting beneath the exhaustion. This heavy pause is giving you the rare opportunity to evaluate your life with absolute honesty. It allows you to look at the patterns that brought you to this state of emptiness and decide, with gentle certainty, that you will not return to them when you finally heal. We must learn to trust the low points of our lives, to treat them not as dead ends, but as the fertile ground from which a truer version of ourselves can emerge. You cannot build a sustainable life on a foundation of constant sacrifice and hidden exhaustion. This period of emptiness is clearing away the old, unsustainable structures of your life to make room for something healthier, gentler, and more authentic. By honoring this quiet, heavy space, you are not giving up on your life. You are finally allowing yourself the time and space to rebuild it from the very bottom up. When we feel lost or burned out, our immediate instinct is to try to fix it. We search for strategies, we make new schedules, and we try to force ourselves into a state of wellness. But you cannot fix emotional burnout with the same frantic energy that caused it. Healing from this level of exhaustion requires you to do the exact opposite of fixing. It requires you to surrender. It means letting the dishes sit in the sink for an extra day without judging yourself. It means letting go of the need to be perfect, the need to be productive, and the need to have everything figured out right now. We are so conditioned to treat our emotions like a project that needs a manager. The moment a heavy feeling lands in our chest, or the second we realize we can't focus, our brain goes into high gear. We start downloading productivity apps, researching vitamins, or planning elaborate new morning routines that promise to restore our energy in 30 days. We treat our broken spirit like a leaky faucet or a malfunctioning computer, something that just needs the right tool and a bit of effort to correct. But your heart is not a machine, and your exhaustion is not a glitch in the system. It is a living, breathing part of you that is crying out for space, not a strategy. When you try to fix your burnout using the same urgent, panicked energy that got you here, you are actually continuing the cycle of abuse against your own well-being. You are telling your tired mind, I will only love you and accept you once you are functioning again. So hurry up and get better. This constant pressure to improve keeps your nervous system trapped in a state of high alarm. You cannot heal a body that you are constantly criticizing for being tired. You cannot find peace when you are treating your current reality as an enemy that must be conquered and eliminated as quickly as possible. Letting go of the need to fix everything means learning the art of letting things be messy for a while. It means looking at the unfinished tasks, the unread messages, and the general clutter of a life put on pause, and choosing to walk away and lie down anyway. It is the realization that the world will not stop spinning if you take your hands off the steering wheel for a little while. The chores can wait. The emails can wait. The expectations of others can wait. The only thing that cannot wait is your absolute need to stop forcing an energy that simply is not there. Think about the profound relief that comes when you finally give up the fight to keep all the plates spinning in the air. Imagine just letting them drop. Yes, some of them might break. Yes, some people might wonder why you stopped. But in that quiet moment after the crash, you will realize that you are still standing. You are still breathing. The sky didn't fall just because you decided you could no longer carry it on your shoulders. There is a sacred freedom in realizing that you are allowed to fail the world's expectations if it means saving your own life. This letting go is not an act of defeat. It is an act of deep, radical faith in yourself. It is choosing to trust that your body knows how to heal itself if you would just stop getting in the way with your endless to-do lists and recovery plans. When a bone breaks, we don't constantly shake it or force it to lift heavy weights to make it heal faster. We put it in a cast, we keep it still, and we wait. Your spirit needs that exact same stillness right now. It needs you to step back, put down the tools, and allow the empty spaces in your life to just exist without you trying to fill them or fix them. It takes a special kind of bravery to look at your life when it feels completely derailed and say, I am going to leave it exactly like this for today. It requires you to sit with the immense discomfort of your own perceived unproductivity. But as you practice this surrender, day by day, you will feel a shift. The tight grip around your chest will begin to loosen. The constant background noise of guilt will start to fade. By letting go of the need to fix everything, you finally give yourself permission to just be a human being who is tired. And that is the only place where true, lasting rest can ever begin. We often misunderstand what rest actually means. We think rest is just sitting on the couch or lying down in a dark room. But if your body is still, while your mind is racing with guilt about all the things you should be doing, you aren't actually resting. True rest is a state of permission. It is the act of actively choosing to step away from expectations. It is allowing yourself to stare at the ceiling without a sense of guilt. It is giving yourself permission to do absolutely nothing of social value for a little while, just to let your nervous system settle back into its natural rhythm. We live in a culture that has hijacked the concept of rest. We are told that rest is only valuable if it rejuvenates us enough to go back to work tomorrow, or if it looks aesthetically pleasing. We see curated pictures of relaxation, and we try to turn our own downtime into another task to perfect. But true rest is inherently messy, quiet, and completely unproductive. It isn't a reward you earn after completing a long checklist. It is a fundamental human right that you require simply because you are alive. When you are emotionally burned out, your definition of rest has to change from a physical luxury to an emotional sanctuary. Think about what happens when you lie down but leave your mind running on the tracks. You feel the physical weight of your body sinking into the mattress, but your thoughts are a chaotic storm of self-criticism. You are thinking about the people you haven't called back, the projects that are slipping through your fingers, or how much further behind you will be tomorrow. That is not rest. It is just a different form of torment. True rest only begins when you look at that entire storm of obligations and say, I am choosing to leave you outside the door the next hour. It is the radical act of closing your eyes and deciding that, for this moment, nothing else in the world matters more than your peace. This means redefining rest as anything that takes the pressure off your soul. Sometimes, rest doesn't look like sleeping at all. It might look like sitting on the porch and watching the wind move through the leaves on a tree, letting your eyes rest on something that demands absolutely nothing from you. It might look like listening to the familiar sound of rain outside, without trying to analyze your feelings or figure out your life. It is the moments where you allow yourself to be completely consumption-free and production-free. You aren't reading to learn. You aren't watching to stay informed. And you aren't listening to improve yourself. You are just existing. It takes time to learn how to rest without apologizing for it. The first few times you try to truly unplug, the guilt will feel loud and uncomfortable. It will whisper that you are falling behind, that you are letting people down, or that you are being lazy. When those thoughts arrive, you have to meet them with deep, unconditional breath. You have to remind yourself that your nervous system cannot heal while it is under constant interrogation. You are allowing the batteries of your heart to refill, and that process cannot be rushed, optimized, or scheduled into a neat little box. Imagine how beautiful it would be to give yourself a day, or even just an afternoon, where you are completely off the hook. No deadlines, no internal expectations, no pressure to be kind, cheerful, or capable. You are just a human being, taking up space on the planet, breathing in and breathing out. That is the kind of rest that heals emotional burnout. It is the kind of rest that washes away the deep, invisible fatigue that has accumulated in your bones over years of pushing too hard. When we redefine rest in this way, we stop treating it as a pause button on our real life, and we start seeing it as the very foundation of our life. You cannot build a beautiful, meaningful existence on a foundation of exhaustion. By choosing to rest deeply, honestly, and without guilt, you are making a profound declaration to yourself and to the world. I am more than what I produce. My worth is not up for negotiation based on how busy I am. You are finally allowing your soul to catch up with your body, creating the quiet, safe space your spirit needs to slowly mend itself from the inside out. Burnout almost always happens because we said yes to too many things for too long, while saying no to ourselves. Rebuilding your energy requires you to erect boundaries, which can feel incredibly uncomfortable if you are used to being the person who handles everything. It means saying, I can't take that on right now, without offering a long, defensive explanation. It means protecting your time and your quiet spaces like they are precious resources, because they are. Every time you set a boundary, you are keeping a small piece of energy for yourself instead of giving it away. When you are deeply exhausted, the thought of setting a boundary can feel just as terrifying as the workload itself. If you have spent your whole life being the reliable one, the healer, the fixer, or the person who always figures out a way to make things work, your relationships have likely been built around your endless availability. People are used to you saying yes. They expect you to be the anchor. The moment you start drawing lines in the sand, you will feel an overwhelming wave of guilt. You will worry that you are being cold, that you are being selfish, or that you are going to drive people away. But you have to realize that the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries are the only ones who will get upset when you finally create them. Rebuilding your boundaries is a slow, clumsy, and often painful process. It doesn't happen during a single moment of sudden confidence. It happens in the quiet, trembling moments when your phone rings. And instead of picking it up because you feel like you have to, you let it ring. It happens when someone asks you for a favor that would completely drain your remaining reserve of strength, and you look them in the eye and say, I wish I could, but I don't have the capacity for that right now. It means stopping yourself from typing out a 3-paragraph message explaining exactly why you can't show up. Your exhaustion is explanation enough. You do not need to justify your right to survive. Think about how much energy you have historically leaked away just trying to keep everyone else comfortable. You anticipated what people needed, you picked up the slack, and you carried burdens that were never yours to bear. Your personal space was completely open, with no walls to protect your heart from the constant demands of the world. Erecting boundaries is simply the act of building a fence around your life, not to lock people out forever, but to create a safe space where you can actually heal without being constantly interrupted by new emergencies. It is a declaration that your inner peace is no longer public property. Every single time you choose to honor your own limitations, you are performing an act of profound self-love. You are telling the tired, wounded parts of yourself, I am going to protect you now. It might mean turning down an invitation to a social gathering, even though you feel like you should go. It might mean setting a specific time of day when you completely disconnect from external inputs and go off the grid. It means letting people experience the consequences of their own choices instead of rushing in to save them at the expense of your own mental health. You have to learn to become unavailable for things that tear you apart. This process will feel deeply unnatural at first. Your heart might race, your hands might shake, and you might spend hours overthinking a single no. That discomfort is completely normal. It is just the feeling of old, unhealthy habits breaking down to make room for self-preservation. You are retraining yourself to believe that your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. You cannot pour from a cup that has been cracked and emptied by the constant demands of a world that does not know how to stop asking for more. As you slowly, step by step, rebuild these walls around your life, you will notice something beautiful happening. The frantic, rushing energy around you will begin to quiet down. You will start to feel a sense of ownership over your days again. You will realize that your time is your own, and that your energy is a finite, sacred gift that you get to decide how to use. By learning to say a gentle, firm no to the world, you are finally saying a resounding, life-saving yes to yourself. If a close friend came to you completely exhausted, crying because they couldn't keep up anymore, you wouldn't yell at them to move faster. You wouldn't look at their tears and tell them that they are being weak, that they are failing, or that they need to hurry up and get over it. You would wrap them in comfort, make them something warm, and tell them to rest. You would look at them with eyes full of absolute love and compassion, acknowledging how hard they have tried and how much they have endured. Yet, when we are the ones who are exhausted, we are often incredibly harsh with ourselves. We call ourselves weak or incapable. Healing requires you to turn that compassion inward. You need to meet your tiredness with absolute gentleness. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you love deeply, who has just run a marathon they never asked to enter. We have this cruel habit of treating our own vulnerability as a character flaw. When our energy drops, the internal critic immediately wakes up and begins to whisper terrible things. It tells us that we are falling behind, that everyone else is managing just fine, and that our exhaustion is proof that we aren't strong enough to handle life. We beat ourselves up for being too tired to finish a task, or for needing to sit quietly in a room instead of being social. This internal harshness is like whipping a horse that has already collapsed from exhaustion. It doesn't make the horse stand up. It just causes deeper, more permanent damage. You cannot shame yourself into wellness. You cannot criticize your way out of burnout. Meeting yourself with absolute gentleness means pausing that critical voice and replacing it with a soft, unconditional understanding. It means looking at your heavy limbs and your clouded mind and saying to yourself, "Of course you are tired. Look at what you have been carrying. Look at how long you held the weight of the world without dropping it. It makes complete sense that you have nothing left right now, and it is completely okay. It is the practice of removing the terms should and ought to from your internal vocabulary for a while. You don't need to be doing anything right now other than surviving and breathing. Think about what it feels like to allow yourself to be imperfect. It means letting go of the expectation that you have to be cheerful, put together, and productive every single hour of the day. Gentleness is allowing yourself to have a bad day without punishing yourself for it. It is letting yourself cry when the tears come, instead of swallowing them down and pretending everything is fine. It is looking at the unfinished projects around you and choosing to view them not as monuments to your failure, but as gentle reminders that you are currently prioritizing something far more important: your own survival. This gentleness needs to extend to the way you treat your body. When you are emotionally burned out, your physical self feels the impact of every single unexpressed worry and boundary cross. Your chest might feel tight, your jaw might be constantly clenched, and your shoulders might feel like they are pushed right up to your ears. Meeting yourself with gentleness means listening to those physical signs with kindness rather than frustration. It means taking a slow, deep breath just to soften your stomach. It means wrapping yourself in a warm blanket, sitting in a comfortable chair, and allowing your body to sink into the support beneath you, trusting that you are safe enough to drop your guard. It takes an immense amount of practice to be kind to yourself when you feel like you are failing the expectations of the world. We are so terrified of our own softness because we think that if we are gentle with ourselves, we will completely lose our drive and never achieve anything again. But the opposite is true. True resilience is born out of self-compassion. When you know that you will meet your own failures and exhaustions with love rather than punishment, you stop living in fear. You create an internal environment that feels safe, supportive, and warm. An environment where a bruised spirit can actually find the security it needs to slowly mend. Give yourself permission to be a beginner at this. You don't have to learn how to love yourself perfectly overnight. Just start with the very next thought. The next time you feel a wave of frustration because you don't have the energy to do something, catch that harsh thought midair. Take a deep breath, soften your posture, and speak to your weary heart with the exact same tenderness, patience, and warmth that you would offer to a tired child. You have fought so hard for so long. It is finally time to stop fighting yourself.